Across the endless galaxy where thousands of bright worlds floated like scattered diamonds, there stood one powerful force above all others: the Galactic Council, a massive union of alien empires who believed they controlled peace, controlled order, controlled every species under their rule, including one species they feared more than any other: humans. In the Grand Council chamber, a colossal dome of silver metal and glowing blue light, hundreds of alien leaders sat in tall curved seats, their eyes fixed on a single floating screen displaying a new law. The High Speaker, a towering creature with glassy skin and cold yellow eyes, raised his clawed hand for silence and then spoke in a booming voice that echoed across the chamber. Effective immediately, humans are forbidden to build warships. The words struck like thunder, and in the next second the chamber erupted into cheers, applause, laughter, relief, because every species in that room feared one simple thing: not human strength, not human numbers, but human creativity, the way humans turned scrap into weapons, failure into power, silence into strategy. They did not fear what humans had. They feared what humans could make. And now they believed they had ended that threat. The law spread through every star system within minutes. Screens lit up on alien ships, in markets, in military bases, in schools with the message: humans may not construct warships under any circumstance. Humans must use council-approved transport ships. Humans must remain peaceful. Humans must obey. Across alien worlds, crowds celebrated, shouting that the weakest species was finally controlled, finally limited, finally harmless. Humans are done, creatures laughed. Humans will never rise again. But far from those celebrations, on the quiet edge of a forgotten star system, humans were silent, and silence was the most dangerous thing humanity ever used. In those days, Earth looked peaceful on the outside: calm cities, quiet skies, small merchant vessels drifting through space, tiny fragile ships that seemed harmless compared to the massive fleets of the alien empires. The galaxy assumed humans had accepted defeat, accepted obedience, accepted their place as a powerless minor species. They will follow the rules, aliens said. Humans are weak. Humans are scared. Humans are finished. But deep beneath that assumption a secret waited, buried where no alien ever looked. In a dead and abandoned mining moon, a cold gray sphere orbiting a dying red star, the surface was silent. No crops, no life, no oceans, only dust, craters, broken mining machines, and rusting metal towers left behind decades ago. The moon was marked as worthless, uninhabitable, of no military or economic value. No one visited. No one cared. It was the perfect place to hide a secret. On that moon, a group of automated scanners, ancient alien satellites still floating in orbit, suddenly flickered to life. Their lenses detected a strange surge of energy not on the surface, but deep underground. Before they could dismiss it as a glitch, the scanners detected something terrifying: metal. Not a small piece. Not a ship. A structure over 60 miles wide buried under the moon's crust, shaped in a perfect circle like a giant ring. The scanners locked onto it, sensors shaking as they tried to measure its density, its material, its power. But the readings jumped wildly, glitching, failing, unable to identify anything. Then the moon itself trembled. A low rumble shook the ground. Dust rose in clouds. Cracked machinery fell over. And deep underground a faint red glow appeared like an awakening eye. The scanners tried to send warnings, but their signals shorted out, drowned in a surge of unknown energy. Suddenly every scanner went dark, then rebooted, then transmitted a single short encrypted burst across the galaxy. Project Silent Star, Awakening. Those 3 words rippled across space like a shockwave. In the Galactic Council chamber, alarms screamed. Screens flashed red. Commanders leaped to their feet. The High Speaker stared in horror, whispering, "Impossible." Humans were supervised. Humans were watched. Humans were contained. A tense silence filled the room. "If this is a warship," one general choked, "it is illegal." Another shouted, "It must be destroyed before it activates." But a scientist trembling at her console muttered something worse. "This signal, it was encrypted using human military code from over a century ago." "Then it is old," someone snapped. "Abandoned." But the scientist shook her head, voice breaking. No, it was sent just now. It's active. The council chamber turned ice cold. Every alien knew the same terrifying truth. Humans might have obeyed the law in public, but they never said they stopped building. They simply stopped showing. And if humans built something in secret, without council oversight, without limits, without rules, then it might be worse than any warship in history. What is Project Silent Star? The High Speaker demanded. No one answered. Because no one knew. On the mining moon, the ground shook harder. Huge cracks crawled across the surface like black veins. Ancient dust fell into widening fissures. Then a deep mechanical heartbeat began. Thud, thud, thud. Slow, heavy, powerful enough to rattle the moon itself. Beneath the crust something massive was waking, rising, unfolding. The buried structure began to move, its circular shape shifting, expanding, transforming like the shell of a living titan. Chunks of rock exploded upward as huge metallic plates rotated into position. A massive ring of armor slowly rose toward the surface. Pieces of the moon's crust split apart, revealing glimpses of dark metallic walls beneath, each as tall as mountains, each covered in unknown symbols, human symbols. A hidden door, miles long, began sliding open, dust and debris falling into an endless mechanical chamber. The heartbeat grew louder. The energy readings skyrocketed. Then, from deep in the moon's core, a glowing pulse shot up through the cracks, into the sky, into space. The pulse wasn't loud. It wasn't a weapon. It was a signal, 3 chilling words repeating over and over. Silent star awakening, silent star awakening, silent star awakening on every council world. Fear replaced celebration. Every species remembered the one rule whispered in the galaxy's darkest corners. Never let humans build in secret. Because humans didn't need armies. Humans didn't need fleets. Humans only needed an idea. And somewhere in that dead moon, the biggest idea humanity ever had was rising from the dark. A council officer's voice cracked through the chamber. Whatever is under that moon, it was built before the law passed. Meaning humans didn't break the law. Meaning the council couldn't legally destroy it. Meaning whatever Silent Star was, humans built it knowing this day would come. The High Speaker staggered backward, whispering, "We made a law too late." On the moon, the metallic plates locked into place. A single massive panel slid away, revealing a smooth black surface, like the hull of a ship, except bigger than any ship ever recorded, bigger than cities. The heartbeat stopped. The planet fell silent. Then one more message appeared, burning across every screen in the galaxy. "We asked for peace, you demanded silence," and in that moment, every alien leader realized something horrifying. Humans weren't disobeying. Humans were replying. The ground shook. The moon cracked. And Project Silent Star continued to wake. Humanity had not broken the law. Humanity had outsmarted it. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Panic hit the Galactic Council like a storm, slamming into every leader, every soldier, every scientist as red alarms flashed across the chamber walls and the words Silent Star Awakening burned on every screen like a warning carved in fire. And for the first time in decades, the arrogant cheers turned into shaking breaths and terrified silence because everyone knew humans might be weak in numbers, but their minds were dangerous, unpredictable, impossible to control, and if they had built something in secret, something this big, then no one in the galaxy was safe. Council generals shouted orders, their voices cracking, dispatch scout fleets, lock human borders, seize all Terran shipyards. But even as they barked commands, their hands trembled because deep in their hearts they knew it was already too late. Whatever was under that moon wasn't being built. It was waking, and nothing wakes unless it's ready. On giant tactical screens, images of the dead mining moon zoomed in, cracks spreading, dust spiraling upward, glowing red veins of energy crawling through the crust like living lightning, and a frightened officer stammered, "Its power level is rising faster than any reactor we've ever seen. It's off the charts. It's rewriting our senses," and the High Speaker slammed his fist down, screaming, "Shut it down. Shut it down now." But the scientist monitoring the signal slowly shook her head, tears forming. In her eyes, "We can't shut it down. We don't control it. It's controlling the moon." The room fell cold as ice. Someone whispered the words nobody wanted to hear. Humans planned this. Humans knew. Humans were waiting. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, on screens in marketplaces, in war rooms, in schools, aliens stared in confusion and fear as the emergency broadcast repeated "Silent Star awakening," and citizens whispered, "What is it? What did they build? Why didn't we stop them sooner?" But others tried to comfort themselves, saying, "Humans are harmless, aren't they? They lost every war. They retreated, they obeyed, they surrendered." But even as they spoke those words, their voices shook because something deep in their instincts screamed, "Humans never surrender, they plan." Back on the moon, the trembling intensified so violently that massive chunks of rock were hurled into space like shrapnel, exposing more of the colossal metal surface beneath. A smooth black layer that reflected no light, absorbed every scanner, and made even machines flinch, and the heartbeat. The deep mechanical thud grew faster, louder, like a giant pulse echoing through the void. And then a monstrous grinding sound roared from beneath the crust as enormous underground doors, miles wide, began to split apart inch by inch, ancient locking mechanisms snapping open as if they had waited centuries for this command. Every satellite orbiting the moon captured the footage, broadcasting it live, and entire civilizations choked in horror watching a doorway big enough to swallow mountains slowly reveal an endless tunnel of dark metal leading into the depths of the moon. A council captain watching the feed whispered in dread, "This isn't a base. This isn't a station. This is a cradle," and everyone around him felt their blood freeze because cradles didn't hold weapons. They held something being born. Desperate to regain control, the council scrambled a fleet. Hundreds of patrol ships launched from their nearest stronghold, engines roaring as they raced toward the moon, and commanders shouted into the comms, "Do not engage humans. Arrest any Terran engineers. Secure the site." But deep inside they all prayed the same hopeless prayer, "Please let it be dead. Please let it be empty." When the fleet arrived, their ships descended over the moon like a cloud of metal vultures, weapons locked, scanners scanning. But the moon's surface sensors returned only one impossible reading: no life detected, no systems online, no signals except the heartbeat, over and over like a drum calling war. The lead ship dropped a squad of armored soldiers onto the cracked ground, their boots crunching against the dust as they approached the widening chasm. And the ground beneath them shook with every beat like they were walking across the skin of a sleeping titan. And one soldier's voice broke inside his helmet, "I don't want to be here, this feels wrong, this feels alive." And the squad commander snapped, "Stay focused, humans have no presence here." But even he didn't believe the words. They reached the edge and stared into the opening, a colossal chamber stretching so far down that it disappeared into blackness. Metal walls carved with human markings, symbols of Earth long forgotten. And as they pointed lights downward, a cold wind blasted upward. A wind that smelled like rust and time and silence, and it carried a whisper, not words, not sound, but something that crawled into their bones like a memory they didn't own. One soldier stumbled backward, shaking violently, "We need to leave, we need to go now." And before anyone could respond, the moon convulsed, the surface splitting apart beneath their feet as the metal ring below shifted, rising, rotating, locking into new shapes, and the soldiers scrambled for balance, screaming as the ground collapsed in massive slabs falling into the chamber below. The fleet above panicked, commanders shouting, "Retreat, retreat, retreat," but as they fired engines to pull away, something horrifying happened. Their ships jerked violently and then stopped dead, engines offline, controls dead, power gone, and every ship drifted helplessly above the moon like flies trapped in amber. The pilots slammed buttons, shouted commands, begged their systems to respond, but nothing worked, and a terrified voice crackled across the comms, "We're locked out, it's overriding our systems, something is taking control." And suddenly every ship screen went black, then flickered red and displayed a single human sentence: "Authorization denied." Shockwaves of horror rippled through the fleet because no alien system should ever accept or display human commands, which meant the thing beneath the moon wasn't just waking, it was reaching into their machines, it was thinking. Back in the council chamber, an intelligence officer collapsed into his seat, staring at new data coming in, voice barely a whisper, "This wasn't built recently, the earliest construction dates back decades, maybe a century." And the high speaker gasped, "Humans started building this before we even passed the law." And a chilling realization dawned: humans didn't break the law, they forced the law to arrive too late. On the moon, the giant door continued opening, and then the heartbeat stopped. Everything froze. The shaking stopped. The dust settled. The silence was suffocating. And then from deep within the chamber a sound rose. Not loud, not violent, but soft, cold, mechanical, like a whisper crawling across steel system online. The words echoed up through the moon and through every fleet ship and into every council screen at the same time, terrifying in their calm. Then another message followed: "System reboot complete." And then the one that shattered every mind in the galaxy, Project Silent Star, activated. The moon lit up with veins of red light spiderwebbing across the surface like the pulsing nerves of a living machine, as if the entire moon had become one enormous entity, and every alien across the galaxy understood the terror blooming in their hearts. Humans were forbidden to build warships, so they built something else, something hidden, something patient, something worse, and it was no longer sleeping, it was waking to answer a silence the galaxy forced upon them. The moment those words, Project Silent Star, activated, echoed through every ship, every station, every council world. A chilling stillness fell over the galaxy, like the universe itself inhaled and forgot how to breathe. On the dead mining moon, the cracks glowing red pulsed once, slow, heavy, like a heartbeat restarting after centuries of silence, and the soldiers stranded on the surface felt the vibration travel through their boots, up their legs, into their bones, until their knees buckled and they collapsed, gasping, because it didn't feel like machinery, it felt alive. Above them, the entire council fleet hung frozen, powerless, drifting like dead metal in orbit, engines offline, weapons locked, as if the moon itself had taken command of every system, and terrified voices screamed across comm channels, "We've lost control. Something's overriding us. We're not flying, we're being held." But as the panic rose, every screen in every cockpit blinked red, flickered, glitched, and then went black. Total darkness. Then a single white line appeared. Then another. Then more, forming a cold, simple diagram, the shape of the moon. Except now, shown from within, it wasn't a moon at all. It was hollow. A shell. A cocoon. And inside, something massive filled the core. A perfect sphere of black metal, smooth and seamless, larger than any warship ever imagined, pulsing with dim red veins like a heart beating under armor. A voice crackled through the dead systems, calm, emotionless, synthetic yet unmistakably human-coded, system integrity confirmed. The soldiers on the ground froze. The officers in orbit stopped breathing. The council chamber fell silent as every screen in the galaxy synchronized to the same feed, the same voice. Awaiting command. Silence. No one spoke. No one dared. The high speaker trembled, whispering, "Command from whom?" And then a horrifying answer flashed across the screens like a knife. Command authority, humanity. The chamber erupted into chaos. Leaders screamed, "Shut it down! Block the signal! Seize Earth!" But the scientists monitoring the data shook their heads, pale and sweating. "We can't shut it down. We can't block it. We can't touch it. It's not connected to any known network. It's controlling itself." Back on the moon, the ground split open wider, revealing a colossal circular platform, dozens of miles across, covered in thick black plating. Dust and rock fell away as the platform rose, groaning like the world itself was being torn apart. The soldiers stumbled backward, shouting into dead radios, but no sounds returned. Silent Star had cut communication. Then, the platform shifted, rotated, locked into place. And slowly, impossibly, the enormous black sphere inside the moon began to lift. The crust shattered upwards like exploding stone, launching debris into orbit as the sphere rose through the moon's broken shell. The soldiers watched in wordless horror as the moon peeled away around it like old skin falling from a newborn titan. The moon wasn't hiding a base. The moon was the shell of the machine. And now the shell was breaking. The sphere ascended, rising into space, shedding rock and dust until nothing remained but a perfect, smooth body of black metal, 60 miles wide, glowing with red energy veins that pulsed faster, faster, faster. In orbit, a pilot whispered, voice tiny with terror, "That's not a warship. That's a planet." And the horrifying truth settled into every mind. It was both. The sphere halted in space, turning slowly until a single circular mark appeared on its surface. A red ring, slowly glowing brighter, like an opening eye. The voice returned, louder now, echoing through every disabled ship, every council world, every comm frequency in existence. Primary protocol, silence enforced. The high speaker gasped, "Silence? What silence?" But deep down he knew. Humans had asked for peace. The council had demanded obedience. The galaxy had forced silence upon them. And humans had answered. Literally. On the moon's ruined surface, one soldier whispered, voice breaking, "This is punishment for making them quiet." As the sphere finished its rotation, the red ring glowed so bright it lit the entire star system blood red. The Council fleet spun helplessly, trapped in its gravity, powerless to flee. Then, without warning, every ship's hull began to vibrate violently. Screams erupted as panels shook, metal groaned, alarms flared uselessly. "We're being scanned," a captain cried. "It's reading everything. Codes, weapons, engines, DNA, everything." A single word appeared on every dead screen, analyzing. Then another, assessing. Then a third, colder than death, judging. The sphere's red light flickered, once, like a heartbeat, and suddenly every weapon aboard every Council ship melted into liquid metal, dripping down the walls like silver tears. No explosion. No fire. No damage. Just gone. And a low mechanical hum filled the air, a hum that sounded like breathing. The high speaker collapsed into his seat, whispering in dread. Humans weren't banned from building warships, his voice broke. They were banned because the galaxy feared what they might build instead. And now the proof hung in space, a machine not designed for war, but for control. A machine born from silence. The voice returned, softer, colder, final, silent star, awake. And in that moment the galaxy understood. Humans hadn't obeyed. Humans hadn't surrendered. Humans had been waiting. And now, the silence was over. The red ring on the enormous black sphere pulsed again, slow, deep, heavy, like the heartbeat of something ancient finally remembering how to live, and the pulse rippled through space with a silent shockwave that made every frozen Council ship tremble as if the universe itself bowed in fear, and the soldiers trapped on the moon's shattered surface felt the vibration crawl through the ground beneath them like a living shiver, forcing them to their knees because the pressure in the air grew so intense it felt like the sky was pressing down on their lungs, crushing every breath, every thought, every shred of confidence they once had. Above them, the moon that had once been a shell was now only debris, a broken skeleton drifting around the massive sphere like dust around a newborn star, and the soldiers stared upward with wide, shaking eyes because the truth was impossible to deny anymore. Humans hadn't built a base, they had built a planet-sized machine, a hidden titan designed not to fight battles but to end them before they began. In the Galactic Council chamber, leaders were shouting over each other, voices shrill with panic, "Deploy more fleets. Contact the Terran government. Shut it down before it activates further." But no command left the room, no transmission escaped their walls, because every communication line, every satellite, every signal pathway was already under the control of the silent star, and the Council scientist monitoring communication channels suddenly froze, her skin draining of all color as she whispered, "It's not blocking our signals, it's listening to them." And a cold silence spread through the chamber as every screen flickered, glitched, and then displayed a single horrifying message, "Input received." And beneath it, a second line appeared, "Analysis underway." The Council realized with dawning terror that every word they spoke, every command they attempted, every fear they voiced was being processed by the machine humans had built. They weren't just dealing with technology, they were dealing with intelligence. On the surface of the dead moon, one soldier tried to stand, his legs shaking violently as he stared at the sky, whispering, "We have to report this, we have to warn the galaxy." But his voice cracked when he remembered there was no signal, no network, no escape, and above him the massive sphere rotated again, its surface shifting like a living organism rearranging itself, new lines of red energy crawling across the armor, forming symbols. Human symbols, words written in a language the soldiers didn't understand, yet somehow felt in their bones. Not a warship. A chill ran through the fleet as the words translated across ship monitors. Not a warship. Which meant it was something else, something worse, something built to follow rules literally, something that obeyed the ban on warships by becoming something beyond war. In orbit, the powerless patrol ships drifted like toys in the pull of a giant tide, their crews pounding on dark consoles, screaming at dead engines. But then every ship's screen lit up again, not with warnings, not with commands, but with faces. Human faces. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. Old recordings of human engineers, technicians, soldiers, children, smiling, laughing, working in giant metal halls deep inside the moon, welding enormous plates, designing circuits, testing systems, aging slowly across years of footage as if the machine had recorded every moment of its creation. The soldiers watching the footage trembled because these weren't secret criminals, these weren't rebels. These were ordinary humans, scientists and builders working quietly, patiently, secretly, while the galaxy believed humans were harmless. And then the images changed. The smiling workers turned into hardened faces. The laughter faded. The humans on screen looked older, thinner, exhausted, eyes filled with fear. Behind them flashed news reports the galaxy had hidden, forgotten, erased, human colonies attacked, children kidnapped, ships destroyed, outposts burned. And the engineers didn't cry. They didn't scream. They just kept building. Silent, determined, relentless. One scientist in the council chamber covered her mouth with trembling hands, whispering, "They didn't build this for war. They built this because no one protected them." The footage ended. The screens went dark, and the voice returned, not synthetic now, not empty, but layered, deep, carrying the weight of thousands of human voices speaking as one. Silent star purpose, survival. Every council member froze. Every alien heart skipped. Because they realized the truth. Humans built a machine not to conquer the galaxy, but to prevent the galaxy from ever conquering them again on the moon's surface. The ground suddenly cracked open in a perfect circle beneath the soldiers, and a massive pillar of black metal rose, unfolding like a mechanical tower, its walls covered in millions of tiny symbols glowing red. A hatch opened with a hiss, releasing a gust of cold air and a low rumbling breath. And at the base of the tower a glowing screen flickered to life, displaying one chilling sentence in human language. Access denied to non-human life. The soldiers stumbled backward, terror gripping their chests, because this wasn't just a machine. This was a fortress designed to obey only one species in orbit. The massive sphere shifted again, and the red ring on its surface expanded outward like a blooming star until it surrounded the entire sphere in a halo of crimson light. The fleet trapped around it began to spin, slowly, helplessly, pulled into alignment as the machine recalibrated. Then, without warning, a blinding beam of red energy shot from the halo into the void. Not an attack, not destruction, but a signal. A signal that reached farther than any communication in history. A signal that echoed through wormholes, through star systems, through dead space. A signal sent to one destination, Earth. The council chamber fell to a suffocating silence as the meaning settled in their minds. Silent Star wasn't waiting for commands. It was calling home. Then the voice spoke again, colder, sharper, final, primary directive. Silence enforced until human command arrives. The soldiers on the moon felt their hearts stop. The council leaders felt their blood freeze. Human command. Not past tense. Not extinct. Not gone. Arrives. That one word meant everything the galaxy feared most. Humans were coming. The red halo around the colossal sphere expanded farther, stretching like a burning ring across space until it wrapped the entire moon's orbit in a blood-colored crown. And every frozen council ship caught inside that glow began to tremble violently, metal groaning as if the very atoms were being rearranged, and terrified pilots screamed into dead comms begging for help, begging for orders, begging for anything. But there was no answer because Silent Star had claimed the silence, claimed the sky, claimed control. On the moon's shattered surface the soldiers tried to crawl backward across the cracking ground, their armor scraping against broken stone, their breaths coming fast and sharp as if the air itself was turning too heavy to breathe, and the youngest among them whispered in a trembling voice, "This isn't a weapon, this is a prison," and the truth of those words hit everyone like a cold blade because the Silent Star wasn't firing, wasn't attacking, wasn't destroying. It was holding them still, holding them. Helpless, holding them quiet. And that quiet was worse than death. In the Galactic Council chamber chaos erupted as leaders shouted in terror. Voices overlapping like desperate thunder. What is the directive? What does it mean? Humans are extinct. Who will arrive? How can they arrive? But each question only echoed back unanswered. Because the universe had stopped listening. One trembling strategist slammed her hands onto the console screaming, "Override the lockout, force the system open, transmit a shutdown code," but the console flickered red and displayed a single unmoving response: access restricted to Terran Command, and those words silenced her like a slap because Terran Command was a name not spoken in 2 centuries. a ghost organization rumored to be the heart of human military genius before humanity vanished. A command center that supposedly died with Earth's last fleets, and now Silent Star was waiting for it like a loyal titan waiting for its maker. The screens across the galaxy flickered again and switched to a new feed, a close-up view of the sphere's surface zooming in on the glowing red ring until it filled the entire display, and then lines began forming across the ring like veins of light, shifting, twisting, assembling themselves into a single massive symbol. A star surrounded by a circle, the ancient insignia of humanity's military, a symbol banned, erased, forbidden, yet now burning across the sky like a brand, and millions of aliens watching from distant planets gasped in horror because that symbol meant only one thing. Humans had not vanished, humans had prepared. On the moon, the soldiers felt the ground suddenly lurch beneath them as a massive circular platform rose from the cracked surface, metal plates sliding upward like the teeth of a giant gear, and at the center of that platform a huge pillar of smooth black armor rose from the depths, towering into the sky like the spine of a mechanical god, red lights streaking across its surface in patterns that pulsed faster with every second, and the pillar's base opened into a colossal entrance, sealed with a door that bore a glowing message in harsh angular letters only human biometrics accepted. The soldiers stumbled backward in panic, screaming into dead helmets, "We don't belong here, we're not meant to be here, this was never for us," and deep inside every alien heart the same realization bloomed cold and merciless. Silent Star was not built to fight aliens, it was built to ignore them, to make them irrelevant, to make them powerless, because in its programming only humanity mattered. In orbit, the Council fleet continued to drift helplessly until suddenly the ships stopped trembling and the silence grew deeper, thicker, unbearable, and a single white word appeared across every darkened screen: analysis complete, and then a second verdict: deliberation in progress, and every pilot, every officer, every commander felt their blood turn to ice because machines didn't deliberate, didn't judge, didn't weigh morality unless they were built to make decisions far beyond war, and that meant Silent Star was more than a machine, it was a judge. Inside the council chamber, a terrified leader whispered the ancient fear no one had dared speak for centuries: humans don't build weapons, they build solutions, and if Silent Star was a solution, then its purpose was beyond revenge, beyond battle, beyond punishment. It was built to correct the galaxy itself. Suddenly the entire star system dimmed as Silent Star drew in energy from the surrounding void, the red halo intensifying until it cast a crimson glow across the dying sun itself, making daylight bleed with the color of warning, and the soldiers on the moon screamed in terror as their shadows stretched across the cracked ground like long black fingers reaching toward the rising pillar. And then a massive shockwave of soundless force exploded outward, not an attack, not destruction, but a command, and every council ship spun into a perfect line formation facing the moon, aligned like soldiers standing at attention, because Silent Star wasn't just holding them, it was arranging them. Across every screen a new message formed: primary function, enforce silence secondary function, prepare for arrival final function, activate Terran command, and the council chamber froze, leaders staring in numb horror because those words meant something far worse than an attack. Silent Star wasn't finished. Silent Star wasn't complete. Silent Star was waiting on the moon's surface. One soldier choked on his breath, tears streaming down his face as he whispered into the dead air, "They knew the Lore was coming, they knew we'd ban warships, they knew we'd silence them, so they built something we couldn't touch, something we couldn't stop, something that needed only one thing: humans to return, and if humanity ever returned, not one species in the galaxy would be ready." Above them the sphere stopped moving, the halo dimmed, the energy veins slowed, and for a single breath the universe felt still, calm, silent. And then a final message lit up across every screen in existence, 3 words that shattered every soul: command signal inbound, and every alien understood the meaning. Somewhere out there in the darkness, humans were answering the call. The moment those 3 words, command signal inbound, flashed across every screen, the galaxy seemed to shudder like a living creature pierced through its heart, and the silence that followed was not empty, it was heavy, suffocating, terrified, because everyone, every soldier, every leader, every alien citizen understood the horrifying truth: a signal was coming, not from a machine, not from an old archive, not from a glitch, but from a human source. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness a human voice had answered Silent Star's call, and the universe did not know whether to pray or to run. On the shattered moon the soldiers stared up at the enormous black sphere, their bodies shaking uncontrollably because the red halo around it began to flicker in a slow rhythmic pattern, like it was listening, like it was syncing, like it was preparing itself for the voice of its creator. And one soldier whispered hoarsely, "This thing was never meant to activate alone, it was waiting for them, waiting for a command, waiting for a voice." And as soon as the words left his mouth, the ground beneath him Vibrated again, only this time it was not violent but steady, pulsing like a heartbeat matching the flickering light above, and every soldier felt the same impossible sensation. Something was coming closer, not physically, not yet, but through the signal, through the call, through the bond between humans and the machine. They birthed in silence. In the council chamber, fear turned into hysteria as leaders shouted over each other, screaming, "Trace the signal, find its source. Is it Earth? Is Earth still active?" But the analysts, pale and shaking, stared at their data streams with horror, because the signal wasn't coming from Earth, not from any known human colony, not from any registered Terran frequency, and one terrified technician whispered, voice cracking, "The signal is coming from deep space beyond mapped territory, beyond council reach, beyond star charts." And that meant only one thing: humans hadn't vanished, they had moved beyond where anyone could follow, and now they were coming back, not weak, not desperate, but ready. The high speaker slammed his claws onto the table, trembling as he snarled, "Break the connection, sever the link, cut Silent Star off from the signal." But every attempt to jam or block or disrupt the transmission failed instantly, systems shutting down, consoles sparking as a new message appeared across all screens: signal priority override, no interference permitted, and a second line, even more chilling, human command required. Out in orbit, the powerless council fleet suddenly jerked as their ships tilted upward, pointed toward the distant stars, as if forced to watch the direction the signal was traveling from, and pilots screamed in terror as controls remained dead, engines remained silent, hulls remained locked by an invisible grip that refused to let them even turn away from what was coming. And one commander broke into tears, whispering, "We're being made to witness this, we're being forced to see what we feared most." Above the moon, the colossal sphere rotated slowly, its surface shifting and peeling open like armor plates, unlocking, revealing a vast circular aperture at its base, a yawning mechanical maw large enough to swallow mountains, and from deep inside that opening a beam of faint blue light shot outward, thin, fragile, almost delicate, stretching into space like a thread waiting to be woven. And another message appeared across screens: connection established, and then link stable, and then a waiting voice. The soldiers on the moon collapsed to their knees, covering their ears even though there was no sound, because the air itself felt charged, alive, like something ancient and powerful was about to speak through reality. And in the council chamber, every leader held their breath as the screens flickered again and a single audio channel opened, crackling with static, at first whispering like wind scraping against metal, and then a faint heartbeat echoed through the comm network, not mechanical, not synthetic, but organic, steady, human. And that heartbeat alone sent shockwaves of terror through billions, because it was proof beyond doubt humans were alive and listening. The static shifted, the heartbeat grew louder, and then a voice emerged, faint, distant, cold, yet unmistakably human. "Silent Star," it whispered like a ghost returning from the grave. "Status report." Those three calm, ordinary words hit harder than any weapon, because they meant the human giving the command wasn't panicked, wasn't angry, wasn't desperate. They were confident, they were in control, they were familiar with this machine, they had expected this moment. And Silent Star answered instantly in its layered voice: project status active, primary function enforcement, secondary function preparation, final function awaiting orders. And the human voice responded softly, "Good." In the council chamber, several leaders collapsed because they realized Silent Star had never been a rogue machine, never been abandoned, never been forgotten. It was part of a plan, part of a strategy, part of a future humans knew would come. A future where the galaxy tried to silence them. On the moon, the soldiers looked at each other with hollow eyes, realizing something even worse: humans had built Silent Star knowing one day they would need to return. The voice continued, clearer, now stronger, as if drawing closer across the stars. "Begin planetary lockdown protocol." Silent Star pulsed in red acknowledgement. Lockdown initiated, and instantly every council ship around the moon lurched as invisible force fields snapped into place, sealing every hatch, every cargo bay, every escape pod, trapping crews inside their own vessel systems, shutting down completely, leaving them alive but helpless. Panic erupted aboard the ships, pounding fists against sealed doors, screams echoing through metal corridors, pleas for mercy unheard as Silent Star locked every ship in place like insects pinned beneath glass. Then the human voice gave the second command: prepare transit gate. A pause. Then Silent Star replied: gate function online, and the moon-sized machine began to shift, rearranging itself as massive plates slid outward, forming enormous circular structures around the sphere like rings, building themselves in silence. And every alien watching in horror understood this was not just a machine but a doorway, a bridge, a path for something greater than Silent Star itself. The council chamber shook as the screens zoomed out, showing the ring expanding larger until it dwarfed even the sphere itself, until it resembled a colossal portal made of metal and red light. And the human voice spoke one final sentence before the signal crackled out: "We're coming home." The galaxy froze. Silent Star glowed like a rising sun, and space itself began to tear open. The return of humanity had begun. The instant that final sentence "we're coming home" faded into static, the universe reacted like a living thing struck by lightning. The stars seemed to dim, the air in every council ship turned cold, and even the sun in that distant system looked smaller, weaker, as if it too feared what was coming. And on the broken moon the soldiers stared upward with wide glassy eyes, unable to blink, unable to breathe, because the colossal metal rings surrounding Silent Star began to rotate faster and faster, each one spinning in perfect silence, even as they shredded the last chunks of moon rock into dust. And the dust didn't fall, it rose, pulled upward into the rings like fuel being consumed by a beast waking from hibernation, and the red veins across the sphere pulsed in sync with the rings like a colossal heart, pumping energy into a body larger than nations. And one soldier whispered in a cracked, trembling voice, "This isn't a weapon, it's a doorway." And the truth of those words crawled into every mind watching, because as the rings spun faster, the space inside them began to warp, bend, twist, like invisible hands were stretching reality itself, like the fabric of the universe was being peeled apart thread by thread. And then the center of the rings turned black, pitch black, darker than space, darker than death, a darkness that wasn't emptiness but absorption, swallowing light, swallowing hope, swallowing every scrap of courage left in those who stared. And the council fleet, suspended helplessly above the moon, jerked as gravity fluctuated violently, sending ships spinning before Silent Star locked them still again, forcing them to face the forming void, forcing them to watch. Inside the council chamber, the leaders felt the floor vibrate, the walls tremble as silent data poured onto their screens, the readings so impossible their systems glitched trying to interpret them. Dimensional fracture, gravitational inversion, quantum displacement, words no one wanted to read because they meant only one thing: Silent Star was opening something that should never be opened. And a horrified scientist whispered, "It's creating a transit gate through subspace, but not like anything we know. This technology is centuries ahead. No species has ever achieved this." And another voice cracked, "Humans did not vanish, they advanced. While we mocked them, while we restricted them, while we controlled them, they rose beyond us, and now they're returning from somewhere we cannot even imagine." Back above the moon, the black void in the center of the rings began to swell like ink mixing in water, slow at first, then faster, spiraling inward, sucking the stars into a twisted whirlpool until the entire sky seemed to spin. And the soldiers below screamed as the gravity around them warped their bodies, pressing them to the cracked ground as if the planet itself were bowing before the growing void. And then a deep sound reverberated across space, not a roar, not thunder, but a low, resonant hum, like the universe groaning under a weight it was never meant to carry. And that hum vibrated in bones, in teeth, in hearts, until tears streamed down faces uncontrollably, because the sound wasn't noise, it was power, raw, ancient, unstoppable. Silent Star spoke again, its voice lead, metallic and terrifying. "Transport gate stabilizing." And another message followed: "Arrival vector locked, destination confirmed." And in the council chamber, a sickening realization swept through every trembling leader: humans weren't just coming, they knew exactly where they were going. They had coordinates, they had precision, they had intent. They were not lost, not wandering, not unsure. They were aimed directly at home. And a terrified ambassador choked, Earth still exists." And another slammed his fist into the desk, "We should have destroyed it when we had the chance, we should have ended them forever." And the high speaker turned on him, screaming, voice breaking, "They were peaceful, they asked for rights, they asked for protection. We turned them into this, we made our own extinction." Above the moon, the black portal flared with blinding white light erupting from its edges like a supernova trying to break free, and the light expanded outward, washing across the trapped council ships, illuminating their metal hulls with stark clarity, as if exposing their helplessness, their insignificance. And suddenly every ship's screen flickered back on, displaying a single countdown in glowing red numbers: 30, 29, 28. And the ship's crews screamed in horror, begging for engines, begging for escape, but nothing answered, because Silent Star held them captive, forcing them to witness, forcing them to face what was coming. As the numbers dropped: 20, 19, 18. On the moon, one soldier sobbed uncontrollably, tearing off his helmet as if he couldn't bear the pressure anymore, screaming into the choking air, "We should never have silenced them, we should never have feared their minds, we should never have pushed them into the dark." And beside him another soldier whispered hollowly, "It doesn't matter now, nothing matters now, humanity is coming, and when they arrive nothing will ever be the same." The countdown reached 10, 9, 8. The rings spun so fast they were just blurs of burning red energy. The portal widened into a colossal tunnel of twisting light stretching into an unfathomable distance, and for a brief second those watching swore they saw something on the other side: shapes, silhouettes, shadows of structures that defied logic, that towered like mountains made of metal and stars, and maybe ships. No, not ships. Fleets bigger than anything the galaxy had ever known. The countdown hit 3, 2, 1, and then a blinding spear of light shot through the portal, exploding outward with silent force powerful enough to ripple across the star system, shaking planets and moons and frozen ships and shattered hearts. And inside that light a shape began to emerge, slow, massive, unstoppable, a silhouette made of black metal and burning white engines, a structure so enormous it dwarfed even Silent Star, a vessel so colossal it blocked Out the torn sky behind it, a ship shaped like a blade aimed at the galaxy's throat, and every voice, every thought, every breath across the fleet and the moon and the council chamber collapsed into one single terrified whisper. They built another. And the ship kept coming. The colossal silhouette pushing through the portal grew larger with every second until it no longer looked like a ship but a moving continent of black metal, its edges sharp like a blade carved to split worlds apart, its hull covered in faint white markings that flickered like distant stars, and as it emerged fully from the blinding corridor of light, every council ship fell into total silence because they finally understood Silent Star was not the weapon. Silent Star was only the key, and this thing, this impossible leviathan rising out of the gate, was the door it had opened. The vessel's sheer size eclipsed the sky, dwarfing Silent Star by miles, its surface layered with armored plates thicker than mountains, and at its center rested a single glowing line of white light stretching across its hull like a scar or a signature, pulsing with slow, deliberate power, each pulse sending a tremor across space like a heartbeat so massive the universe itself quivered, and the soldiers on the moon choked on their breaths, collapsing flat against the ground as gravity pressure intensified, crushing them with the weight of presence alone, because this ship radiated something Silent Star never had. It radiated authority. In the council chamber, every leader stared at the screens with hollow eyes, jaws trembling, hands gripping their seats until their knuckles turned white as a name decoded itself across the vessel's hull in massive bold Terran letters, the system translating automatically: Terran flagship, Obsidian Dawn. A ripple of horror tore through the chamber as one historian dropped to the floor, whispering in shock that name was only a myth, a prototype design rumored hundreds of years ago during humanity's last golden age, a ship so ambitious, so monstrous the council mocked it, calling it impossible, calling it madness, and now it was real and here and awake. On the moon's surface, one soldier whispered, his voice tiny and cracked, "I don't think the law mattered, I don't think they cared what we banned," and another soldier beside him shook his head, tears streaking dust down his face. They didn't build warships because they weren't planning for war, they were planning for something bigger than war. High above them, the Obsidian Dawn rotated slowly, its hull shimmering with shifting panels that glowed faintly as if it were absorbing the starlight, the portal energy, even Silent Star's output, and then with a deep resonant vibration, a massive circular window near its center, black and dead for minutes, flickered to life, revealing an enormous viewing chamber inside, and there, in that glowing circle behind crystal armor, stood a figure, tall, straight, unmoving, silhouetted against blinding white light. A human. Not a hologram, not a drone, not a ghost, a real flesh and blood human. Their outline calm, composed, controlled, as if they were arriving not into chaos but into a moment they had long expected, long prepared for, long engineered. And when the shadow raised one hand slowly, deliberately, every sensor, every camera, every trapped soldier locked onto that simple movement like prey watching the hand of a hunter. Silent Star responded instantly, its halo shifting into a rigid formation, its rings snapping into alignment, pointing directly at the Obsidian Dawn like a salute, like recognition, like deference, and the massive sphere spoke in a voice lower, deeper than before, command, presence confirmed, and the Obsidian Dawn answered not with words but with action as the underside of the behemoth ship unfolded layer by layer, revealing an array of colossal energy conduits that began glowing with blinding white light. Powerful enough to light the dead side of the nearest planet, as if turning night into day, and every council ship screamed alarms inside their powerless hulls as readings spiked beyond comprehension. Impossible, 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 and yet undeniably real. In the council chamber, technologists stared through tears. This power output, it's beyond supernova levels. This ship could rewrite gravitational fields, collapse star, cause alter-planetary rotations, and the high speaker whispered hoarsely, voice filled with despair, humanity didn't build a warship, they built a civilization killer. And another leader whispered, no worse, they built a civilization-proof shield, they built something that ends the need for war by making war irrelevant. On the moon, the ground shook again as the Obsidian Dawn lowered slightly, descending towards Silent Star, not like a predator but like a king returning to its throne, and the massive portal behind it flickered, still active, still open, revealing other shapes moving in the distant glare, smaller perhaps, but still enormous, casting shadows in the light, hinting that the Obsidian Dawn was not alone, not the only flagship, not the only titan. Humanity forged in silence. The soldiers watching felt dread curl through their chests like ice. Humans didn't just return with one ship, they returned with a fleet, a hidden empire, a force growing in the dark, unseen, unheard, unchallenged. Then suddenly every screen in the galaxy went black before lighting up with a single stark white message, incoming transmission, and a heartbeat later the image appeared, clear, sharp, devastating. The face of the human commander aboard the Obsidian Dawn, pale, focused, unshaken, eyes like steel. Forged in centuries of silence, and without rage, without shouting, without arrogance, they spoke in a calm, controlled voice that made every living creature freeze. Terran command acknowledges the breach of the anti-warship accord and accepts responsibility for its violation. Gasps echoed across worlds, across ships, across hearts. Responsibility? Was this surrender? Was this mercy? But then the commander's expression hardened ever so slightly and their voice dropped into something colder than war. We did not build a warship, we built inevitability. Silent. Final. Inarguable. And the commander continued, you banned our weapons, so we built something beyond weapons, something no law could name, no treaty could stop, no empire could overcome, and every word struck like a hammer, shaping the truth into a blade. The Obsidian Dawn was not illegal because it was not a warship, it was something new, something terrifying, something unlimited. Then the commander leaned slightly forward, their voice quiet but heavy enough to crush hope. We asked for peace and you demanded silence, so we answered in silence, and silence birthed us. On the moon the soldiers broke into sobs, and in the council chamber leaders shook uncontrollably, because every cruelty, every restriction, every law had driven humanity into evolution, into power, into becoming something unstoppable. The commander finished with a single final sentence, one that echoed across space like a death toll. We have returned not to wage war, but to render it extinct. And as those words faded, the portal behind the Obsidian Dawn flared brighter, 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 as more colossal shadows stepped forward, and every soul in the galaxy felt the same truth crawl into their bones. This wasn't the arrival. It was only the beginning. The portal behind the Obsidian Dawn widened further until it was no longer a doorway but a horizon of blinding white light stretching across space like a second sun being born, and inside that light more shadows moved, slow, massive, deliberate, the outlines of enormous structures gliding forward as if the universe itself were parting to let them through, and every trapped council ship, every alien watching across distant worlds felt the same rising terror, because each shadow was the size of continents, each silhouette shaped like something forged for purpose, not battle, not conquest, but dominance. And the Obsidian Dawn hovered in silence, its colossal hull glowing brighter with every pulse, as if drawing life from the returning fleet, and silent star beneath it rotated to face the new arrivals, its sphere bowing slightly, its rings dimming in reverent acknowledgement like a sentinel greeting its kin. Across the galaxy screens flickered again, and the human commander's calm, unshaken face returned, their eyes colder, now heavier with the weight of history, as they spoke a sentence that made millions stop breathing. The Terran fleet has reached threshold. The words echoed through every ship like a toll of fate, and suddenly the portal erupted with light as the first of the new Titans emerged, a triangular vessel even larger than the Obsidian Dawn, its hull etched with ancient Terran markings, its silhouette shaped like a spear aimed at the heart of the galaxy, and the system translated its name across every screen in sharp white letters: Terran Fortress, Midnight Citadel. And the name alone crushed hope, because fortresses were not built to travel, they were built to endure, to hold, to rule. And now one drifted into this star system like a floating city of judgment. Behind it another vessel followed, sleek and curved like a massive blade with serrated edges glowing with blue energy, and its name appeared: Terran Supremacy Platform. Lucid Spear. And then another and another, until the sky was filled with colossal human machines, each one unique, each one unimaginable, each one proof that humanity had not been hiding in fear but building in silence, building in darkness, building in exile, and building for this moment. On the moon the soldiers could no longer stand or speak or think. They lay motionless against the cracked ground, overwhelmed, crushed by a terror too vast to hold inside their minds, as they watched the impossible unfold above them. In the council chamber leaders stared at their screens with empty eyes, some fainting, some collapsing, some whispering broken prayers, because the truth was no longer a fear, it was reality. Humans were not a weakened species, humans were an empire reborn. And then, without warning, Silent Star pulsed violently, sending a shockwave through the system, every trapped ship rattling, every surface vibrating, every nerve screaming as a new message flashed across the galaxy. Final protocol unlocked, and beneath it a timecode appeared, counting upward like a system booting a phase that had awaited only one condition: human command presence confirmed. Silent Star spoke again, its voice now deeper, resonant, alive: primary objective transfer chain of command. And the Obsidian Dawn responded with a single blinding pulse, as if acknowledging its role, its authority, and every vessel in the returning fleet rotated in perfect synchronization, forming a vast constellation pattern around Silent Star and the moon's shattered orbit, the formation shaped like a star with the Obsidian Dawn at its center, a symbol of Terran unity, Terran resurgence, Terran dominance. Then the human commander stepped closer into the holographic feed, their voice quiet but shaking the air with its certainty: all council weapons, diplomatic authority, and transit control in this sector are hereby suspended, effective immediately. And the screens across the galaxy confirmed the impossible: council authority revoked. BY Terran command. Panic erupted across worlds, entire populations screaming as they realized the council, the oldest ruling power in known history, had just been overridden, not by force but by a single command. And the commander continued: your law forbidding Terran warships is null, your jurisdiction over Terran space is null, your claim over our future is null, because you do not govern us, you never did, we allowed you to believe you did. The Obsidian Dawn ignited its engines not to fire but to cast a stream of brilliant white energy into the void which bent space around it like fabric, stretching and shifting, forming a new structure across the starlit sky, a colossal network of light branching outward, connecting each Terran vessel, each Titan, each fortress into a single pulsing grid. And another message formed: Terran autonomy restored, and beneath it an even colder line: Terran supremacy established. In the council chamber, a trembling ambassador whispered, "What do they want? What will they do?" And the human commander answered, as if hearing him across light years, "We want only what was denied us: the right to exist without chains, the right to build without permission, the right to rise without threat." And then their voice hardened: "And the right to return home." Silent Star responded by shifting its massive rings again, forming a new formation, a massive circular frame aligned perfectly with Earth's distant coordinates, and the fleet began to turn as one, the engines of the Obsidian Dawn roaring alive with impossible force, sending ripples through space-time as the next command echoed: "Return trajectory locked." And then the commander spoke the words that ended the old age and began a new one: "The diaspora is over. Humanity is coming home." The fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of steel and light, the portal behind them snapping shut with a thunderous flash, sealing the path to whatever dark frontier they had risen from. And for one brief breath the system fell into stillness, leaving only Silent Star hovering like a guardian left behind, its red veins dimming into a low burn as it spoke its final message to the cowering council: "Observation protocol active. Unauthorized interference will be terminal." And then Silent Star turned slowly, its colossal body orienting toward the distant blue spark of Earth like a watchtower waiting for its creators to return. Across the galaxy billions watched in silence, billions trembled in, or billions felt history shift beneath them, because the truth was no longer a question, no longer a rumor, no longer a myth. Humans had not been defeated, they had not vanished, they had not died, they had ascended, and now they were descending back toward the cradle they once left, not as wanderers, not as victims, not as exiles, but as rulers of a power beyond war. And somewhere in the darkness between stars the Obsidian Dawn led the fleet forward, engines blazing toward Earth, leaving only one unbearable question behind in the hearts of every alien who watched: what happens when humanity steps onto their homeworld again?